The older you get, the more you crave peace. But what if the person stealing that peace is your own family? There are people who only reach out to you when they need something, and they will drain you dry if you don't learn how to say no. Don't let anyone make you feel ashamed of your faith. You don't need anyone's agreement to hold on to what you believe. As we grow older, something strange begins to happen. We no longer crave noise and chaos like before. Instead, peace becomes a rare luxury we start to treasure. We value clarity over confusion and sincerity more than even blood ties. But here's a truth very few dare to say aloud. The most dangerous people in your old age might be the very ones closest to you. They could be family members, longtime friends, people who once walked by your side for years. But as time goes by, the masks begin to slip, and then you realize not everyone stayed because of love. Some people remain in your life simply to control, manipulate, and slowly drain you. Now, let me introduce you to the first type of person you must avoid in your later years, the guilt tripper. I want you to hear this with your whole heart, because these people never enter your life looking suspicious. They don't scream or shout. They come in the form of concern, dressed up as love, and sweet words that seem to care about you. But behind those gentle questions lies a toxic weapon. Guilt, used as a tool of control. They don't use harsh words. They whisper, they sigh, they create uncomfortable silences. And the moment you say no, you're instantly labeled ungrateful, selfish, or worse, heartless. You say you need time for yourself, and they look at you like you've committed the unthinkable. If you're not careful, you'll end up spending the rest of your life apologizing simply for existing. These are the people who make you feel indebted just because you're aging, as if your very presence is a burden. And their manipulation, though quiet, is incredibly dangerous. It hides in familiar phrases like, "Well, I guess I'll have to handle it myself since you're too busy." Or, "I once took care of you, and now look at how you treat me." And here's what I want you to remember. Your life is not a debt to repay. Not to your children. Not to your siblings. Not to anyone. You don't owe anyone your peace. You don't owe them your health, your time, or the last of your energy just so they can feel morally superior or stay in control. That is not love. That is manipulation, a type of control disguised as closeness. And the older you get, the more you realize that time is your most sacred asset. Those who make you feel guilty are master time thieves. They drain you with exhausting conversations. They bind you to responsibilities that were never yours. They make you question your own worth. They'll say things like, "If you really loved me, you'd do this." But you must remember, love is not measured by exhaustion. No one has the right to demand that you give up who you are to prove how much you care. You don't need to shrink yourself to fit someone else's expectations. Real love lets you be yourself, without fear, without guilt. And what's even more dangerous is this. Guilt trippers often train you to doubt your own reality. You begin to ask yourself, am I being too harsh? Am I being uncaring? Am I not doing enough? That's how they bind you. They turn your emotions into invisible chains and keep you trapped inside them. But freedom begins the moment you realize that emotional manipulation is a form of control. And in old age, you don't have time to live under anyone's control. You need space to breathe, to heal, to live the rest of your life on your terms. You've spent decades living for others, raising children, caring for family, working tirelessly. You've given so much. And now, you have every right to reclaim what's left for yourself. Not because you're selfish, but because you've sacrificed enough. I understand in our family-centered culture this might sound wrong. But remember, you don't have to cut people off just to protect yourself. You simply have to learn how to set boundaries. The line between love and control is thin, and sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let someone down, especially when their expectations never came from a place of true love to begin with. Here's something many people find hard to say out loud. Just because someone is family doesn't mean they're good for you. They might love you in the only way they know how, but that way isn't always healthy. Sometimes the people who tire your soul the most are the ones you're related to. And you are not obligated to carry it all just because of the label family. You were not born to heal every wound in your family. You don't need to become the dumping ground for anger, a stress reliever, or an emotional cushion for those who refuse to take responsibility for their own feelings. You were born to live, fully and truly. You don't need to explain your boundaries to people who have no intention of understanding them. You don't need to justify your need for peace. If your soul feels lighter when you are away from them, then that is the truth. A truth that requires no defense. You've been silent when you needed to be. You've endured far more than you should have. And now, you deserve rest in the remaining years of your life, in the peace you paid dearly to earn. If someone truly loves you, they will honor that. They will respect the space you need. They won't bind you with guilt. So if you've been waiting for a reminder to have the courage to say no, this is it. Every time you say no to unrealistic expectations, you are saying yes to yourself. And that is always a worthy choice. You've come a long way to reach this awareness. And the journey isn't over yet, because there is still another type of person you need to be cautious of. A person who doesn't use guilt to control you, but still drains you in another way. Slowly, quietly, and consistently. You've spent your whole life giving. Now as the years accumulate, you don't need to explain your peace anymore. You only need to receive it. Because this peace didn't arrive by accident. It wasn't gifted to you. It came from every fall you stood up from on your own. From sleepless nights, silent tears, and all the times you stayed quiet when you should have spoken up. From moments you gave, even when you had nothing left. That peace was earned with your life, so please don't trade it for guilt. If someone truly loves you, they will want you to have peace, not submission. Because true love doesn't demand, it respects, it cherishes. It creates space for you to breathe, to be yourself, rather than suffocating you with vague responsibilities. That's why, as you continue your life's journey, be cautious of those who use guilt as a means of control. They may come with gentle smiles and sweet words, but if your soul feels heavy after they leave, trust that feeling. The soul always knows when it's being pulled into something unhealthy. And if you've been waiting for permission to say no, this is it. Saying no to them is saying yes to yourself. A choice worth making time and time again. Now let's talk about the second type of person you should avoid. They may not use guilt, but they exhaust you in another way. These are the chronic complainers, constant critics, and people who are never satisfied. I call them energy vampires. You know the type. People who could win the lottery and still find something to complain about. The sun is shining and they still grumble about how bright it is. You're having a peaceful day and they walk in like a storm, dragging a gloomy cloud and trying to pull you into it with them. As you grow older, your energy becomes sacred. It is no longer abundant. You must be selective about where you place your energy and who you give it to. But those who radiate negativity don't care. They can talk for hours about everything wrong in their life without once asking how you are or how your heart is doing. Worse still, they don't want solutions. They want company in their misery. They don't explode with noise. They drip negativity slowly and relentlessly. One phone call, one visit, one conversation is enough to leave you drained for the entire day. You feel anxious, uneasy, heavy, and you don't even know why. That's how it seeps into you. They show up, dump all their emotional weight onto you, then leave feeling lighter, while you're left holding bags you never packed. And remember this, you were not born to be someone else's emotional trash bin. You were not created to absorb darkness at the cost of your own inner light. Your role is not to carry the chaos of others, especially not now. I know, sometimes that person is very close to you. It could be a close friend, a neighbor, a sibling, or even your own child. And that makes you hesitate. But just because they are part of your life story does not mean they have the right to write your ending. If they cannot bring peace into your life, if all they offer is criticism, complaints, and negativity, then keeping your distance is the right thing to do. Not because you're angry, but because you value yourself. You've come to realize that your emotional well-being matters, and you no longer have time to be drained by people who only take. Have you ever noticed? Some people make you feel smaller after every conversation. They don't shout at you, but every word from them scratches away at your hope. Your mood drops. You begin to doubt things you firmly believed just minutes ago. That is the silent erosion of peace. And the frightening part is it builds up over time. Some people have lived in negativity for so long they no longer see it. They build their identity from complaints, from what's wrong, from what they lack. And if you stay around them too long, you start to get pulled into that distorted view. That's the real danger. They don't just exhaust you, they change how you see the world. They darken your once clear perspective. And without realizing it, you begin to carry their emotions as if they were your own. You start to shoulder burdens that were never yours to begin with. You deserve to be around people who lift you up, people who challenge you through love, not judgment. People who speak words of life, not constant negativity. People who remind you that the world still holds beauty, even in the chaos. And if you can't find those people in your current circle, maybe it's time to shrink that circle. Peace isn't loud, it doesn't announce itself. But when it's gone, you'll feel it in every cell, in your thoughts, in your heartbeat. Protecting peace means protecting your energy. And protecting your energy means learning to step away from those who treat you like an emotional dumping ground. You are not obligated to listen to everything. You don't have to entertain every complaint. You don't need to carry what they refuse to release. Guarding your space isn't cruelty, it's wisdom. It's self-love. Because eventually you'll realize you can't keep living for those who are draining your soul. That's when you must choose. Either keep pleasing everyone or protect yourself. And once you're ready to make that choice, let me tell you about the next kind of person. The one who doesn't just come around when there's trouble, but treats you like a lifeline they never appreciate. After you start to understand the power of saying no to emotional manipulation, a new chapter of healing begins to unfold. Because there will come a time when you must stop apologizing for choosing peace. Saying, I love you, but today I cannot carry this with you, is not heartless. It's wisdom. It's a self-preservation instinct sharpened by years of endurance. It doesn't make you cold, it means you've grown. And once you've reached this age, you no longer owe anyone an explanation for why you choose quiet over chaos, healing over arguing, and inner calm over being swept into someone else's drama. You've carried enough. You've sacrificed plenty. At this point, your energy must be guarded like a sacred treasure. Every sigh of complaint, every repeated criticism, every phone call pulling you back into their negativity, it all chips away at what you've worked so hard to preserve. And if you don't set limits, you'll be pulled in again and again. More importantly, there is a certain kind of person who wounds you even deeper. They don't come to share joy or presence. They come only when they need something. They treat your relationship like a temporary stop to take what they lack: money, time, comfort, or just someone to unload their darkness onto. And once they've taken enough, they disappear. No thank you. No call to check on you. They leave as if they were never there. You try to think the best of them because you have a generous heart. You remind yourself of the good memories of the times they were there for you too. You want to believe that one day they'll come back not to take, but simply out of love. Over time, life teaches you a hard lesson. Some people only show up when they need something. They don't really care how you're doing. They only care about what you can offer. No matter how many years you've walked with them, that doesn't turn exploitation into love. A relationship full of memories still isn't enough to make it healthy. It's not love, it's dependence, it's convenience, and it gradually drains you emotionally, spiritually. If you don't learn to set boundaries, if you don't dare to say no, you will continue to be drained piece by piece. One of the most painful lessons in adulthood is this: being needed does not mean being loved. It may sound contradictory, but it's the truth. Some people only keep you around because they know you won't say no, because they know you're soft-hearted, forgiving, always available. Every time they show up, they take a piece of you. Maybe your time, maybe your peace, maybe the presents you should have reserved for yourself. They don't come to give back, they come to take. And what's more dangerous is they always have a good reason, a sad story, a justification, a promise that this time things will be different. In that moment, you want to believe them. You hold on to hope. But then the cycle repeats. You give, they take. And when they're okay, they disappear. You don't see it immediately. Because this kind of exploitation doesn't come like a storm. It comes like water seeping into the soil. Slowly, silently, consistently. Until one day you start to feel exhausted without knowing why. You start to feel guilty for not always being there. You begin to wonder if you're being too harsh. But deep down, you know you're being used. And that realization hurts. There's a particular kind of silence that follows when someone has taken everything from you. A silence not of peace, but of indifference. No messages, no concern, no care. And that silence is a painful reminder they never came for you. They came for what you could give. If you listen closely, that very silence will teach you something powerful. That you deserve more than this. That you were not born to be someone's backup plan. That love isn't measured by how often you show up when others need you, but by how they show up for you when you have nothing to give. I know letting go is one of the hardest things, especially when you've shared years with someone. It could be someone you raised, someone you prayed for every night, someone you believed was connected to your soul. But the time comes when you must ask yourself, what is this relationship costing me? Not just money, but peace. Time to be true to yourself. Faith in your own worth. Are you being overlooked? Are you being turned into a tool? And when you finally dare to say no, when you step back to protect yourself, they will immediately label you as selfish. That's how they react when they lose control. They're not angry that you walked away. They're angry because you stopped serving their interests. But in that exact moment when you choose peace over endless giving, the truth will surface. You'll see clearly who truly loves you and who only used you to fill the emptiness within themselves. And once you see that truth, be ready, because there's still another kind of person you need to face. A kind of person who may not say much, but whose energy alone is enough to silently exhaust your soul. You've lived long enough to understand real love doesn't drain you. It doesn't demand that you trade your peace for someone's presence. When you learn to say no, when you dare to draw the line, some people will leave. They might get angry. They might twist the story to suit their version. But you must stand firm, because you know the truth. You were not born to be used. You were born to be loved. At this stage of life, you don't need people who keep score. You don't need people who only remember you when they're in crisis. You need people who remember you in joy and calm on the days when there's no reason to reach out other than genuine care. People who cherish you not for what you give, but for who you are. Notier kun ban dik ne du val file word huark munim dik tip fun kak, em lam ngay cho chirnyen. Ban da noi. V chat GPT da noi. Dui de la ban dik ting am. Dardik lai ba huan tuan do. Nu chi ilko. Ji nguyen e tun ko. Over time, life teaches you a hard lesson. Some people only show up when they need something. They don't really care how you're doing, they only care about what you can offer. No matter how many years you've walked with them, that doesn't turn exploitation into love. A relationship full of memories still isn't enough to make it healthy. It's not love. It's dependence. It's convenience. And it gradually drains you, both emotionally and spiritually. If you don't learn to set boundaries, if you don't dare to say no, you will continue to be drained, little by little. One of the most painful lessons in adulthood is this. Being needed does not mean being loved. It may sound contradictory, but it's the truth. Some people only keep you around because you don't know how to say no, because they know you're soft-hearted, forgiving, always available. Every time they show up, they take a piece of you. Maybe your time, maybe your peace. Maybe the presents you should have reserved for yourself. They don't come to give. They come to take. And what's more dangerous is they always have a convincing reason. A sad story. A justification. A promise that things will be different. In that moment, you want to believe them. You hope. But then the cycle repeats. You give, they take. And once they're okay, they disappear. You won't see it right away. Because this kind of exploitation doesn't arrive like a storm. It creeps in like water, soaking into the earth. Bit by bit. Quietly. Consistently. Until one day you find yourself exhausted and you don't even know why. You begin to feel guilty for not always being there. You start wondering if you've become too harsh. But deep down, you know you're being used. And that truth hurts. There's a kind of silence that comes after someone has taken everything from you. It's not the silence of peace, but of detachment. They don't text, they don't check in, they don't care. And that silence speaks clearly. They were never here for you. They were here for what you could give. If you're still enough to listen, that silence will teach you something profound, that you deserve more, that you weren't born to be someone's backup plan. That love is not measured by how often you show up when others need you, but by how they show up when you have nothing left to give. I know letting go is hard, especially when you've been connected to someone for years. It might be someone you raised from childhood. Someone you once prayed for every night. Someone you believed was tied to your soul in a sacred way. But eventually you'll have to ask yourself, what is this relationship costing me? Not just money, but your peace, your time to be true to yourself, your belief in your own worth. Are you being taken for granted? Are you being turned into a tool? And when you finally say no, when you choose to step back to protect yourself, they'll immediately label you as selfish. That's how they respond when they lose control. They're not angry that you stepped away. They're angry that you're no longer useful to them. But the moment you choose peace over endless self-sacrifice, the truth becomes clear. You'll see who truly loves you and who is only using you to fill a void within themselves. And once you recognize that, be ready, because there is still another type of person waiting for you. Someone who may not say much, but whose energy alone is enough to wear down your spirit every single day. You've lived long enough to understand that real love doesn't drain you. It doesn't require you to give up your peace for someone else's presence. When you dare to say no, to set boundaries, some people will leave. They may get angry. They may twist the story in their favor. But you must stand firm, because you know the truth. You are not born to be used. You are born to be loved. At this stage of life, you don't need people who constantly calculate. You don't need people who only think of you in moments of crisis. You need those who think of you in joy, in peace, on days when there is no reason at all other than genuine care. People who value you not for what you give, but for who you truly are. You've already given so much, now it's time for you to receive. Not just surface level respect, but real care and mutual connection. And to do that, you must first learn to stop being the emotional dumping ground for others. You are not anyone's energy outlet. So when someone knocks on your door, but only when they need help, when they show up with open hands yet have never opened their arms for you during your weakest days, remember this. If their love only exists when you have something to offer, it was never real love. Now let's talk about another type of person. The kind that's not easy to recognize at first, but once you do, you can't unsee it. These are the controllers. No matter how old you are, they look at you as if you aren't wise enough to know what's best for your own life. They don't shout. They don't give overt commands. Often, they sound like they're offering gentle advice. But behind their surface-level concern lies a hidden intention. Control. And you need to hear this clearly. You don't need to be controlled. You need to be respected. There is a subtle form of emotional suffocation when someone constantly makes you doubt yourself, when they chip away at your ability to trust your own judgment. They say, "I'm just trying to help." But in reality, they are quietly stripping away your voice, your dignity, and your freedom. At this point in your life, you deserve all three. Controllers come in many forms. Some are loud and obvious, always forcing their opinions, always insisting you think or act a certain way, but others are quieter, more subtle. They don't bark orders, but they constantly give you unsolicited advice. They leave you confused, hesitant, uncertain. They don't do it because you're weak. They do it because your independence threatens them. That independence challenges their power. So they question everything you want to do. You want to travel? They say at your age, that's not wise. You want to downsize your home? They say you're not thinking clearly. You want to give something away? They whisper, don't rush. What if you need it later? Those words are not meant to support you. They're meant to make you second guess yourself. That is not care. That is control disguised as love. And if you're not careful, this kind of control can make you feel like a child in your own life. But remember this, age does not take away your ability to make decisions. If anything, it deepens your wisdom and experience. You've lived through war, crisis, loss, separation, healing, forgiveness, and growth. You've earned the right to know exactly what you want. Anyone who makes you feel otherwise is not helping you. They're manipulating you. And you don't need to be manipulated anymore. What makes this even more painful is when the person trying to control you is someone you love. It could be the child you raised, the partner who's been with you for decades, or a longtime friend who seems to know you best. And because they're so familiar, you start to listen. And then you begin to doubt. Your world starts to shrink. Not because you wanted it to, but because someone else decided that's how it should be. But here's the truth. You are not alive to make others feel comfortable. You are alive so your soul can be free. And if that means disappointing some people, so be it. Your truth doesn't need approval. Your freedom doesn't need permission. You've paid for it with decades of sacrifice and endurance. Don't let anyone confuse needing support with needing to be controlled. Yes, we all need help sometimes. But needing help does not mean handing someone the keys to your life. It simply means inviting them to walk beside you, not to lead, not to dictate. And controllers often feel offended the moment you resist. They'll say, "I'm only trying to care." But there is a clear difference between care and control. Care comes from love. Control is rooted in fear. And you've lived long enough to stop letting other people's fears guide your path. You deserve to be surrounded by those who trust you, who honor you, who believe you know what's best for your own life. And if after all this time they still don't trust you, then what else do you have left to prove? You don't need approval. You need peace. And if you think this is the last type of person you should avoid, think again. Because there's still one more someone all too familiar, yet silently wears down your soul day by day. You don't need people who try to control you. What you need are those who are willing to walk beside you, who respect your personal journey, not those who impose their way of life on you. Sometimes to have that freedom, you must step into uncomfortable conversations. You must say words that may hurt others, but will rescue yourself. You must be able to say, "I love you, but I will make this decision on my own." And even when you're misunderstood, you still choose respect over silent suffering. That is courage. And that very courage will set you free. Because if someone in your life is trying to box you in, acting like a parent when all you need is a companion, making your dreams feel ridiculous, stop. Stand firm. Because you are still alive. This life is still yours, not theirs. And now, here comes the next type of person you must recognize and stay away from: those who refuse to grow up. Who are they? They're the ones who wear age on their faces but carry the soul of a child, bitter, blaming, and emotionally stuck. They live in the past, trapped in cycles of resentment and unhealed wounds. You've seen these people. They may have white hair, but they never learned how to heal. They know how to survive, but they never learned how to grow. When you're around them, it feels like you're being pulled backward. They keep you stuck in narrow perspectives, rigid thinking, and a heart that closed itself long ago. If you're not careful, they will hold you there, right beside them. They talk endlessly about others but never reflect on themselves. They criticize, nitpick, but rarely ask, "Do I need to change something?" They act like they know everything, but really they're just afraid of change, because change requires facing reality. And they've grown too comfortable living in the pain and blame they've known for years. I want you to remember this: maturity doesn't stop when your hair turns gray. True maturity, especially spiritual maturity, is something you need even more as you grow older. Because by now, you're not just looking back. You're preparing for something deeper: peace, clarity, and a meaningful spiritual legacy. But you can't move into that freedom if you're still surrounded by people who refuse to grow. People who argue over the smallest things. People who carry rage from decades ago as if it were a treasure. People who wear old wounds like medals when in reality they are just chains pulling them down every day. If you let them, they will drag you into pointless conversations, debates that do nothing for your soul. They'll sweep you into old stories and dead-end thinking. And the truth is, it's not your job to change them. It's not your responsibility to push them forward when they've chosen to stand still. Harsh as it may sound, ask yourself, was your soul created to be trapped in someone else's emotional immaturity? Just because you once walked with them through the past, does that mean you have to carry them into your future? Someone may tell you, you've changed. But you know what? That's a compliment. Because if you haven't changed, you haven't grown. If you haven't matured, you're slowly dying emotionally, spiritually, mentally. But to those who are stuck, your growth feels like a threat. Your peace disturbs their chaos. Your healing reminds them of wounds they still refuse to face. And often, the hardest people to let go of are the ones you've known the longest. Not because they're good for you, but because they're familiar. they've become a habit. But familiarity is not a good enough reason to keep enduring pain. You have the right to love someone from a distance. You can cherish the memories without carrying their weight. You can hold on to what was beautiful and still walk forward, free from heaviness. I've seen so many older people out there, full of stories but empty of wisdom. They can tell you what happened but not what it meant. They live with unprocessed memories, able to recite but not reflect. You were not born to repeat that pattern. You've come to this age to live more deeply, more slowly, and with more clarity, to learn the lessons others skipped, to give light, not bitterness. And if you find yourself stuck among people who endlessly complain, blame, and see the world through the same outdated lens, ask yourself, is this truly serving your soul anymore? If not, maybe it's time to step away. Because ahead of you, there's still one more type of person you need to recognize. A type not only exhausting your spirit, but quietly destroying the very foundation of your spiritual life. You've just learned to recognize those who use guilt to control you. But it doesn't stop there. There's another kind of person who quietly destroys your inner peace. Those who refuse to grow up and those who mock your faith. They can list every regret they've ever had in life, yet they cannot articulate what they've actually learned from those mistakes. That's not wisdom. That's just unprocessed memory. And memory without awareness is simply a loop that traps you in the past. You didn't make it to this stage in life just to go in circles. You've come a long way to find peace, to rest, and to live a chapter that's more meaningful than old stories. You're here to pass on truth, not to relive someone else's chaos. But you can't do that if you keep dragging along people who refuse to change, who won't heal, who never reflect on themselves. Their chaos will become a hidden burden on your shoulders. Their pain will become a prison that locks up your soul. And one day you'll find yourself watering dead plants every morning hoping for revival, even when you already know it will never come. Let me say something that may be hard to hear. Some people don't want to grow up. They're not interested in getting better. They just want to be right. And if you try to convince them otherwise, you'll end up burning the precious years of your life sowing seeds on ground that will never bloom. But that is not your mission. You were not born to carry the emotional immaturity of physically grown people. Your mission is to guard your peace, to continue growing, and to surround yourself with souls who are also on the path of healing and transformation. Seek those who listen with open hearts, not just mouths. Find people who are open, not just loud. People who are seeking healing, not clinging to their pain as a way to justify harmful behavior. When you're with people like that, you'll feel it clearly. Relief, mental clarity. Life becomes more vibrant because growth always creates space. But being with those who resist growth makes your soul feel suffocated. You deserve relationships that feel like a fresh spring breeze, not a thick fog that presses on you every day. You need people who challenge you in love, not those who trap you in fear. And if that means shrinking the circle around you, then so be it. A small circle that is whole and mature is far more valuable than a wide one full of judgment and noise. If you find yourself surrounded by people who never move forward, who keep replaying the same story, who cling to past bitterness, who blame everything but themselves, then it's time to stop. Remember, healing requires willingness. No one can drag along a person who doesn't want to take a step. And there's still another type of person you must learn to keep at a distance, especially in this sacred phase of life. Those who mock your faith. Those who belittle what has held you together through the storms. Those who roll their eyes when you mention God or laugh when they see you pray. This isn't about having different beliefs. These are people who openly dismiss your faith as if it's some fairy tale. They take pleasure in breaking down what you've carefully built within your soul. But faith is not weakness. Faith is strength. It's what held you up when people couldn't. It's the whisper that told you keep going when everything seemed to collapse. Anyone who mocks that, anyone who calls it foolish, doesn't deserve space in your life, especially not now. Because at this stage in life, the questions inside you run deeper. Your reflections are no longer shallow. You think about the afterlife, the true purpose of living, the presence of something beyond logic. You're no longer counting years. You're measuring meaning. And in that sacred space, you need people who speak life, not sarcasm. They may not share your faith, but at the very least, they must respect your spiritual journey. They don't need to fully understand it, but they must never belittle it. Some people are so trapped in doubt, they can't help but ridicule what they don't understand. They make you feel silly for praying. When you speak of hope, they smirk. When you share how God led you, they look at you like you don't belong. And if you let them get too close, their doubt will slowly seep into your mind. Not because they're right, but because their voice is too loud and too constant. Don't let that happen. Don't let their mockery shrink your faith. Don't let their cynical jokes plant shame into your soul. Faith is not fragile, it is fire. It's what kept you alive. It's what held your family together. It's what has healed your heart time and time again. Faith doesn't make you naive. It makes you steadfast. It makes you wise. And if someone can't see that, then they're looking with the wrong eyes. What's painful is that sometimes these people are very close to you. It could be someone you've known for decades. It could be a family member who's drifted away. Sometimes they're the very reason why you hide your faith when you walk into familiar rooms. We've talked about those who use guilt to control you, about relationships that drain you under the disguise of love. But there's another kind of person who may not use words or blame to control you, yet quietly chips away at the very foundation that keeps you standing. Your faith. It could even be your own children. The same little ones you once nurtured every step of the way now believe they are too enlightened to believe in what you hold dear. In their eyes, your beliefs are fairy tales, outdated and irrelevant. Yet no matter what they say, whether they believe or not, you still love them. You always will. That love doesn't fade just because someone doesn't understand you. But loving someone doesn't mean you have to allow them to disrespect what is most sacred to your heart. This is not about winning an argument. It's not about trying to change someone's beliefs. It's about protecting the deepest part of your soul. About guarding the spiritual ground you've built not through theory, but through scars, stumbles, and the moments you stood up in the darkness with nothing but a small, desperate prayer. You have bled for your faith. You've cried for it. You've leaned on it to survive losses that words could never fully describe. And you owe no one an explanation for why you believe, why you pray, or why you continue to hold on to what you know is true. Because faith isn't something you learn from books. It is forged through your own lived experiences. You know exactly what you've been through. You felt the hand of God lifting you when no one else was there. You've heard His voice in silence. You've seen the light of His grace shine in moments when you felt least worthy to receive it. And honestly, I don't care how educated, accomplished, or woke someone claims to be. If they haven't walked through the valley you've walked through, they have no right to mock the light that is now guiding your path. They have no right to belittle the faith that pulled you from the depths. Sometimes, love requires distance. Sometimes, you have to learn how to love someone from afar just to keep your soul intact. You can still pray for them. You can still wish them peace. But you do not have to allow them to shake the foundation of your spirit. You don't have to let them plant doubt in the very thing that has kept you grounded. Because the truth is, that's not love. That's a hidden battle, a spiritual war disguised as harmless conversation. And it's not just what they say, it's the energy they bring. It's the mocking look, the eye roll when you mention faith. The sarcastic remarks that seem harmless but slowly chip away at the rock of peace within you. Bit by bit, the peace you've built is worn down. Bit by bit, your heart begins to sway. And if you're not careful, you'll lose the very thing that has saved you countless times. You deserve respect. You deserve to be surrounded by people who, even if they don't share your beliefs, still honor the path you walk. People who may not understand what you believe, but who respect the truth you live. They sit beside you not to convince, but simply to be present. Not to mock, but to listen. Because in the end, when we all leave this world, what matters isn't how many debates you won. It's how much peace you held on to. How deeply you loved, how firmly you believed. And I hope that when your head hits the pillow each night, you feel a real and lasting peace. Not because everything is perfect, but because your soul is anchored. Because you didn't let mockery steal your reverence. Because you still held tight to your faith, even when others laughed at it. And if someone comes into your life with sharp words or cold silence trying to make you feel ashamed of your faith, remember this. You don't need their approval to draw near to God. You only need the courage to stand for what is sacred within you. Because faith is a treasure, and you are the one entrusted to guard it. Once you know what to protect and what to avoid, you'll begin to realize an even deeper truth. Some people don't just attack your beliefs. They slowly drain your spirit. Not with words, but with a presence heavy with never-ending complaints.